spoken to him, nor have I interviewed him. I have interviewed colleagues, such as Board Director Tom Whitmore. I've interviewed Board Director Chase Klutsky before, and I've been pretty critical of MUFON in the way they seem to do things at their own merit. And some people like it, some people do not. But this new letter that absolutely just came out, which was very, very intense indeed, is very intriguing for a lot of people because it tells about some of the inner workings that MUFON is doing these days. For instance, and this is a big one for me, and Michael, I'd be curious to get your portion on this. In this letter by Philip Leach, he states in no particular order his concerns, all right? And number one that he put on there is that, and I'm going to read this, he goes, I have found that some investigators are having extensive background checks run on witnesses when they submit a report. Some of these background checks are more than typical. In such instances, a report will be closed without speaking or emailing a witness due to results from a background check. Only doing a random case check, I have found several with comments surrounding these findings, which include violent criminal acts, child molesting, and one report showing a comprehensive list of medications a witness is using with side effects from these medicines. Documenting this in a database open to many individuals within MUFON could possibly violate HIPAA laws. I addressed these issues with the Executive Director, Jan Harzan, along with Director of Investigations, Chase Klutsky, weeks ago, and at the time of this letter, the information is still attached to these reports. I told both Jan and Chase of the possible legal ramifications this could have, with no avail, it seems. With the small amount of reports I looked at, it is hard to judge how many reports or states are following this practice. In short, if there is a criminal background check result or criminal background result found, no contact or email will be sent to a witness, as the investigator clearly states in these reports, and the case will be closed as information only or insufficient information. I guess it is possible there were permissions given to some states. I then question who is paying for this service. If this is a common acceptable practice, it is my hope MUFON trains its field investigators properly in this area and documents this guideline in its State Director Field Investigator Manual. Now, the concern I have with this, Michael, and I'm curious to get your opinion, people need to know that if they submit a report to MUFON, that they are going to get a criminal background check. They are going to get a health check. Now, let's say, hypothetically, that 12 years ago, I spent 2 years in prison because I got in a bar fight and I hurt a guy pretty bad. All right? Does that mean that even though I saw a black triangle over my house and aliens in the background, does that mean that my report is no good because I spent time in prison? And what knowledge does MUFON gain from understanding on a criminal record check? Because whether you've done extremely shady, and trust me, I don't want to deal with any sick bastards, whether or not, they've abused children or raped women or anything like that. I think it's disgusting, and you shouldn't follow up. But in the relevancy of the report, what does their criminal record have to do with seeing a potential UFO or landing or anything of those sorts?
Yeah, it is quite concerning for sure. This is a really shocking document that you've got here, Dave, and I appreciate you bringing it up to my attention for sure. Now let's just go through the idea of what we're talking about here with this Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. That's the HIPAA Act that everyone talks about, where basically, if you have healthcare information, the portability or the sharing of that information is highly regulated. And basically, the healthcare community is not able to publish that information. Matter of fact, I think some people will corroborate this, that even if you're married and your spouse has a doctor's appointment, or your children, let's put it that way, have a checkup that they need to have done, it's very difficult even to get this information about your own loved ones if they don't sign waivers, if they're over a certain age, and it's well below the age of majority, by the way, and even though you're married to a spouse, those informations are confidential as well.
HIPAA itself is federal. Now, the age of consent, I believe, is dictated by state. Like in Washington, you can't admit your 14-year-old to psychiatric. It all depends also on which exact area of the hospital or medical care is needed. But HIPAA itself, yes, I can call and make my spouse a doctor appointment, no problem. Now, can I access my spouse's medical records? No. They will not release any information by the HIPAA Act.
Exactly.
Every hospital has a form you have to sign.
Right.
Personally,
Now, if your spouse or your child, a 14-year-old, signs the consent form that yes, and they usually have a list. These are the people that have authorization to all my medical care, and they put your name down. If you're not on that list, you're not going to find anything out unless they're violating the HIPAA Act.
But that's for each hospital, too.
It is. Each hospital is bound independently by the HIPAA Act. You can't just sign a HIPAA Act in one hospital and have the other hospital, they have to do it their own. And regardless, you're not going to find anything out, regardless of which hospital you call.
well, gentlemen, there were 12 points, and Chris, sorry, there were 12 points made on this, including the special assignment team, which, if anybody knows, okay, MUFON is supposed to be very, very open with their files. You can go on their website, check out all their files for free. However, what most people do not know is if they send out their SAT team, their special assignment team, those reports are kept hidden from the public.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Why? Why are they hidden? So you're telling me if this SAT team, say, runs into a close encounters of the third kind situation, that is not getting out to the public. Yet MUFON prides itself on being very open with their reports. So why do you have a secretive team?
They work for Bigelow, maybe?
Well, I think, you know what? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we can throw up all sorts of estimations as to why they are doing it. But the reality is, where is that information going? Why are they storing that information? And let's say, if there is ET contact, why is that not going out to the public? Isn't that MUFON's goal?
That was supposed to be their goal. And I'll bring this up. I've brought it up on the show before. I was with MUFON as a field investigator trainee back in the 90s. I left MUFON after a year because what I saw, and after talking to the other investigators that had been with MUFON, they were nothing but a debunking agency back then. They treated their experiencers like crap. They debunked abductions. They didn't even handle abduction cases. And that was back in the 90s. So they gotten better? I don't know. I have a couple state directors that I do talk to and work with. FMP works with them. And from him, each state director can work and handle their particular MUFON for their state independently, based on how they want to run it. And you're right. There are some outstanding folks in MUFON. I think the problem comes from the headquarters.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. I'm just kind of scanning through. We caught through Spaced Out Radio, and there's a lot of talk in here about their press person, a gentleman by the name of Roger Marsh, their media director. We caught him in a blatant lie that I have brought up with Chase Klotsky on the air. I brought up just a week ago with Tom Whitmore on the air, where we had one of our listeners email MUFON, their PR guy, Roger Marsh, stating, has MUFON at any time taken or traded financial income for information? And he said, absolutely not. It has never happened. Well, we all know it has happened with Robert Bigelow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, this gentleman has apparently been holding MUFON a little bit hostage in his contract negotiations with certain things. And, MUFON is covering things up, and it isn't good. They talk about the scientific way of doing things. Like I said, there's 12 points in this letter. And, Eric, I've sent you a copy of it. So if you want to release that on your Forest Moon Paranormal page for any of your listeners to read up on that, they'd be more than willing. Go for it. Why not?
Okay. I will.
Right.
So
Why
for
not?
all of our for all of our FMP members, I will be releasing that tonight, so you can read it for yourself.
Now, I have also talked with another member of MUFON who received this letter, and I'm going to keep this person anonymous because I like to protect my sources, who said absolutely 100% everything in this letter is true. Everything.
And, I'm going to be blunt. I've had a bad taste in my mouth with MUFON for years, with the exception of a few state directors that I do work with and talk to. And that's based from the 90s. But if you're going to treat your experiences like crap, and, that's bad business in this field for one. But is this going to hurt the UFO community as a whole? Personally, I don't think so, because we have NUFORC, we have National UFO Reporting Center, and we have Filer's Files, the other UFO Reporting Center, that I think will pick up the slack and always have. MUFON being international, could it hurt us? I don't think so. That's just my opinion, though.
Well, I want to read something else because it also gets into the John Ventry saga. Okay, so for people who do not know who John Ventry is, this is a gentleman who was the Pennsylvania State Director. John Ventry made all of his money. He's a multimillionaire, money that any of us could ever dream of. All right, he's like uber rich. He made his money years ago with him and his buddy perfecting the patent of the hydraulic wood splitter. And anyways, long story short, Mr. Ventry back in late 2017, early 2018, made a very controversial and racial comment on his Facebook page and was subsequently relieved of his duties as Pennsylvania State Director. However, it was later found out by Chris Cogswell, our resident scientist, that he resigned over Ventry's comments because Ventry was still helping out with symposiums behind the scenes. So in this letter with Phil Leach, in Section 6, it says, some time ago, Mr. Ventry's racial comments were a concern, to say the least. So why the hesitation to remove him from his position? The hidden truth was money. Mr. Ventry actually is listed under the 501c3 stats because MUFON has a lab in Pennsylvania. Upon inspection, this lab is at his residence. Yep, along with MUFON 501c3 records showing an income at that location. So he has, on his own nonprofit, you